10 spine-chilling cruise ship nightmares, revealed disturbing true stories of cursed voyages. As the Voyager set sail, a shiver rippled through the air. In cozy Fisher Point, Sarah, a single mother, clutched her children's hands, hiding her worries beneath a brave smile. This was supposed to be a fresh start, a chance to bond on the vast, blue sea. But as the sunlight faded, an unsettling calm blanketed the ship, making her skin crawl. Jake and Mia, full of teenage bravado, rushed ahead, oblivious to the chilling whispers that swept through the decks. That first night felt wrong. Flickering lights painted sinister shadows on polished corridors. It was as if the ship itself breathed, holding back secrets in its hull. Sarah overheard crew members huddled, murmuring in low tones about past accidents, tales that sent chills down her spine. She wanted to brush it off, but something gnawed at her gut, an instinct she couldn't ignore. "I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right," Sarah admitted to the kids as night closed in. Their eyes darted about the dimly lit cabin, a flicker of fear showing through their bravado. "We're here to have a good time," Mia said dismissively, but Jake's expression turned grave. What if the legends are true? Things escalated quickly. The crew, once friendly faces, avoided eye contact, hurried past with an urgency that left Sarah uneasy. For Jake and Mia, the oddities became more personal. A crew member haunted their every move, familiar with their lives in a way that made their skin crawl. Shadows twisted around them, and every innocent creak of the ship sent their hearts racing. "Just relax," Sarah insisted, though her mind raced. But she wasn't prepared for the scream that pierced the stillness of the night. It came from below deck, echoing like the cry of a tortured soul. Panic flooded the air, laced with fear. Families huddled together, eyes wide, exchanging frantic whispers about disappearances and ghost stories that haunted the vessel since its maiden voyage. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. The ship lurched violently, tossing passengers like ragdolls as darkness engulfed the decks. Sarah grabbed her children, terror coursing through her veins. People screamed, chaos erupted. Someone shouted that an older passenger had vanished, and then her heart dropped. They had to get out. She pulled Jake and Mia close, but the crew, once a source of reassurance, now guarded the exits, their expressions inscrutable. A heavy mist began to creep down the corridors, suffocating and palpable. With each step they took, the air thickened. Sarah felt it, a swirling presence that whispered of despair. In the frail light, she stumbled onto something round, a journal, battered and worn, tucked beneath the bed. Heart racing, she flipped it open, and her worst fears materialized on the pages. The history of the Voyager was sinister, a grim legacy entwined with Fisher Point. As the ship creaked and groaned, nursing its own wounds, Sarah realized that they were entwined in a nightmare beyond comprehension. What unseen force lurked behind the polished veneer of this luxury liner? Would they uncover the truth before time ran out, or would the cursed mystery of the Voyager claim them all? The journal trembled in Sarah's hands, its pages yellowed and stained. The words leaped out at her, telling tales of storms that swallowed ships whole, spectral sightings, and passengers who had never been seen again. Her heart pounded like a war drum, drowning out the chaos. "Mama?" Jake whispered, his voice cracking. The mist wrapped itself around them like a shroud, amplifying the shadows that danced along the corridor. "What is happening?" "I don't know," she replied, her own disbelief reflected in the children's terrified faces. Outside their cabin, the screams crescendoed, punctuated by the scraping of metal against metal. Suddenly, a door slammed in the distance, startling them. They exchanged frightened glances. "We need to get out of here," Mia urged, stepping back toward the cabin door. As they ventured into the corridor, the flickering lights overhead began to sputter and die, plunging them into near darkness. Sarah could barely make out the shapes of other passengers, akin to lost souls, their eyes wide and haunted. Each frantic step was filled with the taste of dread, like a bitter copper tang that settled at the back of her throat. "Follow me," she shouted, though the urgency in her voice sounded hollow even to her ears. They dashed through the mist, weaving between the jostling bodies that pressed against them, all struggling to escape the nightmare closing in. The ship's groaning intensified, punctuating the silence with a thunderous roar. Somebody collapsed nearby, gasping for breath, their face as pale as a ghost. Sarah's heart wrenched at the sight. "Stay close," she yelled, grabbing Mia's hand just as something icy brushed against her neck. A sensation so foreign she almost brushed it off as her imagination running wild. "Mom, did you feel that?" Jake asked, scanning their surroundings, eyes widening in fear. "Just keep moving," Sarah barked, pulling them along. They reached a stairwell but hesitated, the howling wind seeping through the cracks a sinister invitation to descend. As they slipped into the narrow stairs, echoes reverberated, making it indistinct whether they heard cries for help or the insidious laughter of the crew. Shadows leaped in the corners of their vision, and Sarah felt her pulse spike with every creak of the ship. Each step seemed to echo their growing despair. They rounded a corner, heart in throat, and nearly collided with a crew member. His eyes darkened, swirling with something more terrifying than fear: malevolence. "Where are you going?" he asked, his smile too wide, stretching unnaturally across his face. "Just trying to get out," she stammered, gathering her courage. The chilling grip of the journal lingered in her thoughts. Were they truly trapped on this cursed ship? "Not all who enter here return," he hissed, voice like ice. Then, with a swift motion, he stepped aside, eyes glimmering with ominous delight. With her breath quickening, Sarah shoved the kids forward. "Run!" But Mia turned back, frozen like prey in front of a predator. "Mama, look!" she gasped, trembling uncontrollably. What lay behind her sent Sarah reeling. A shadow slithered from that crew member, coalescing and forming into a figure so dreadfully familiar. It was someone she knew all too well, a face she hadn't seen in years, a face that had been lost at sea, a specter of her past come to haunt her. "Help me," the figure pleaded, its voice layered with chilling echoes. Terror gripped Sarah's chest as she realized the truth: the tales were not just legends. The cursed souls of the ship were real, and now, she was one heartbeat away from joining them. As the ship groaned again, sending a wave of malevolence coursing through the air, Sarah made a desperate decision. They had to go deeper into the ship, find out the truth to break free. They needed to understand what was truly going on. But as they descended into the belly of the Voyager, the chill of fear settled deeper. What awaited them in the dark depths? Would the answers save them or seal their fate forever? The darkness swallowed them whole as they stepped deeper inside the Voyager. The air grew colder, the walls slick with a dampness that felt alive, pulsing and breathing with each cautious footfall. Sarah clutched Mia's hand tighter, offering what little warmth she could. Jake trailed close behind, his demeanor shifting from fear to a desperate resolve. "Mom, are we going the right way?" Jake's voice cracked, barely rising above the groaning timbers that surrounded them. "I hope so," she replied, though doubt gnawed at her. How could they find safety in a maze designed to trap them? Each door and passageway seemed like a whisper of doom, secrets rustling in the shadows. They rounded another grim corner, flanked by rusted metal fixtures that loomed like a jagged fortress. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an open cabin door. The only light spilling from within flickered unpredictably, casting odd shapes against the corridor walls. An involuntary shiver slithered down Sarah's spine. "Let's check it out," Mia suggested, her eagerness mingling uneasily with scared curiosity. "Stay close to me," Sarah cautioned, pushing the door open with a trembling hand. The room was strewn with supplies, but it was the bodies that caught her breath. Littered across the floor were passengers, their limbs twisted in unnatural angles, faces frozen in expressions of horror. The air was choked with the scent of decay. "Mama!" Mia gasped, pulling her back. It's wrong. We can't stay here." Before Sarah could respond, an ominous chill flooded the room. The light flickered darker as shadows pooled in the corners, each pulse seeming to pulse in time with her heartbeat. "Who dares to enter?" A voice slithered from the dark. It was low, raspy, clinging to the air like the fog around them. It echoed off the walls, wrapping around them like a serpent. "We're just trying to get out," Sarah shouted, panicking as she felt Jake grip her leg. The shadows twisted, and a figure emerged. It bore a semblance of humanity, but the gaping maw where a face should have been sent icy tendrils of horror crawling up her spine. Instead of eyes, it had deep voids, sucking in the surrounding light. Sarah backed away, heart pounding like a drum. "Leave now," it whispered menacingly, flickers of memories spilling from its voids, dragging Sarah to recollections she wished to forget. Every scream she had heard, every moment of her past clawed forth from the depths of her mind with inky fingers. "We can't," Jake said, his voice rising in defiance. "We need to help those people." Mia tugged at his arm. "No. We need to go." "They're gone, Jake." The creature lunged, forcing Sarah to react instinctively. She pulled the kids back toward the door, desperation fueling her movements. "Run!" Her voice pierced through the grotesque laughter that echoed off the walls. They darted into the corridor again, the grotesque sound of the creature behind them growing fainter. But as they moved, the lights flickered back on, revealing the faces of the passengers once thought lost, now leering at her through gaps in the doors. Each face was twisted in a macabre smile, whispering the same dreadful words. "Join us," panic gripped Sarah as they stumbled past the horde of hollowed eyes. Their weary sighs echoed Sarah's own exhaustion and terror. "Turn back. You'll never escape," they chorused. The ship jolted violently, sending them crashing into a wall. "I can't take this anymore," Mia cried, but there, at the edge of a dilapidated hatch lay a glimmer of hope. A passage leading out. Was it a trap or their salvation? "Mom, we have to take it," Jake urged, sensing her hesitance. The figure from the cabin loomed again in the shadows, waiting. As Sarah hesitated, glancing back at the ever-encroaching shadows, she felt the weight of the ship beneath her feet, hinges creaking under the burden of dread. Gritting her teeth, she pushed forward. But would this be their refuge or their doom? What secrets lay beyond that hatch, and would the terror following them allow them their freedom, or was it only a new layer of horror waiting to be unveiled? Sarah shoved the hatch open, the rusted door screeching against its frame, sending a shock of noise skittering down the haunted corridor. A draft howled from the passage beyond, carrying a bitter chill that prickled the skin. Mia and Jake surged ahead, propelled by an urgency they couldn't articulate. The darkness behind them felt tangible, buzzing with malevolence. As they stumbled through the narrow passage, the air grew thick and stifling. The weight of dread pressed down on them like a lead blanket, and every instinct screamed for them to turn back. "Mom," Jake whispered hesitantly, "what if this is a mistake?" "Just go, keep moving." Sarah snapped, her heart racing as she heard the sounds of scraping from behind, relentless and insistent. They couldn't linger, not even for a moment. She forced herself onward, the shadows breathing just behind their every step. The dim light flickered sporadically, revealing sections of the passage adorned with warped metal and splintered wood. It was a constant battle between hope and despair. Was there an end? Or would they just trip into another nightmare waiting in the gloom? Suddenly, a sharp clang echoed behind them, freezing Sarah in her tracks. "Run!" she screamed, sensing the dread spilling from the shadows once more. She propelled herself forward, pulling Mia along, Jake's hand slipping into hers. They hurtled down the corridor, adrenaline fueling their flight, but it seemed the ship had eyes. The walls themselves felt like they were closing in. "It's too tight," Mia cried, her voice laced with panic. Barely keeping her composure, Sarah leaned down. "We're almost there, honey, don't look back." The hallway twisted unexpectedly. They stumbled onto a dimly lit platform, a large engine room with gears turning and steaming pipes snaking like ancient serpents. An oppressive heat clashed with the chill of the ship's air, sending beads of sweat down their brows. "What is this place?" Jake asked, voice trembling. "Don't know, but we can't stay," she replied, scanning the surroundings for more exits. Just as she thought they might find refuge, a low humming began to resonate from the shadows, growing louder. From the depths of the engine room, shadows surged, forming a mass with grotesque shapes. It morphed, becoming the creature they defaced before, its void-like face now punctuated by grotesque, writhing tendrils. Leave this place," it hissed, the echo vibrating through the metal walls. "No. We want tea," Jake shouted defiantly, stepping in front of Mia. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. What was he thinking? "Jake, move," she commanded, but the kid stood firm, eyes burning with a strange determination that made her proud yet terrified. "Join us," the creature crooned, its voice slithering over them. "You will find peace." Sweat pooled at Sarah's temples. She pulled at Jake's arm, desperate, but he resisted. "No, this is wrong," he yelled. "Can't you see? Mom, we can't abandon them." In a split second, everything shattered. A flash of memories broke through as the faces of the lost passengers sprang forward, encircling the room. They were no longer ghastly figures but the people Sarah once recognized. They'd fallen into despair, each cry echoing her own fears, churning within her gut. "Sarah, help us!" The whispers tangled together, wrapping around her heart, and then the floor beneath them lurched violently, the ship shuddering as its metal frames screamed in protest. The shadows recoiled as the noise reached a cacophony, and suddenly, the walls exploded with light, illuminating every haunting figure. Consumed by terror and indecision, Sarah glanced at her children. There was no way out. They were trapped, but then a hatch in the corner banged open, revealing another corridor with flickering lights beckoning them to safety. "Let us go," she shouted, clutching Mia and Jake's hands. But who knew if it would lead to salvation or yet another nightmare? As they dashed towards the glowing doorway, a resounding voice, deeper than the ship itself, roared, "You cannot escape the cycle." What horrors awaited them in the brightness just ahead? Would they find hope, or was this merely another path to another hell inside the Voyager? The light pulled them in, almost magnetic, as they sprinted toward the doorway. The shadows writhed behind them, a dark tide rising, hungry for their retreating forms. With each step, anxiety clawed at Sarah's throat. The creature's words echoed around her, "You cannot escape the cycle." It felt like an omen, a warning she couldn't shake off. Jake was gripping Mia's hand tightly as they burst through the hatch. They stumbled into a wider corridor, dimly lit by sickly green lights that flickered above. The air was thick with humidity, making it hard to breathe, and brimming with an invisible weight that felt like eyes watching their every move. "Keep moving," Sarah urged, glancing back toward the doorway they'd just passed through. She expected the creature to appear, extending its tentacles into the corridor, but nothing came. The silence felt sinister, almost mocking. No sounds, no hints of pursuit. Yet dread poured into her stomach like poison. What if it's a trap? Mia whimpered, her small voice shaking. "It's the only way," Sarah replied, forcing confidence into her tone. But doubt gnawed at her. They had just escaped one nightmare. What kind of horrors lay ahead? The corridor twisted sharply, and each turn brought with it the sense of disorientation. Sarah had lost track of time and direction. A moaning groan resonated through the walls, almost as if the ship itself mourned. She glanced at Jake. He seemed pale, terror-stricken, and she felt a pang of guilt. She should have protected them better. Ahead, the corridor split into 3 paths. Each one stretched into eerie darkness, the shadows thickening before them like an ink stain. "Which way?" Jake asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She hesitated. "I don't know. We could go left." The words felt hollow, but there was no better option. As they edged toward the left corridor, the air seemed to breathe heavily around them, filling their lungs with an oppressive weight. Each step was like trudging through molasses, dread making their feet feel heavy. Then, a sudden change. A vivid flash broke through the darkness, illuminating grotesque murals on the walls. They depicted passengers with wild eyes, faces twisted in panic. Some were reaching out, trapped in invisible chains. Dark tendrils snaked around them, pulling them towards shadowy figures that lurked just beyond the mural's edges. "Mom, look!" Jake shouted, pointing. One mural showed a woman with familiar features, her eyes wide with horror. "Not again," Sarah breathed, her heart hammering. It was like looking into a mirror of despair, the same fear reflected back at her. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, and the ship shuddered beneath them. Mia screamed as the ground shook, and Sarah's grip on her tightened. The murals seemed to writhe, almost alive, the painted figures twisting and reaching out as if they were trying to escape their prison. "Run!" Sarah yelled, pulling her children forward. Panic fueled their sprint, their feet pounding against the metal flooring. They burst into a large room, resembling a dining area that had long since been abandoned. Tables lay scattered, chairs overturned, remnants of someone's last meal still half-eaten. Dust floated in the stale air, slanting through the weak light from above. "In here," Sarah urged, hoping it would provide shelter. But as they entered, the door slammed shut behind them with a booming thud. The sound echoed in the silence, sealing them in. "What was that?" Mia cried, pressing against Sarah. They could hear a low hum resonating through the walls. It grew louder, wrapping around them like a vice. Shadows shifted in the corners of the room, and Sarah felt a chill creep up her spine. And then, laughter. Soft, mocking laughter that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once, enclosing them in a cocoon of terror. "Welcome," the voice dripped with malice. "You've arrived at your destination." Sarah turned to her children, their eyes wide with fear. "Stay close," she warned, her voice steady despite the growing dread. But with every passing second, she felt the room closing in, as if the walls themselves were constricting, holding them captive. There was no way out, and the laughter was met with a pulse of darkness all around them. What wretched fate awaited in this cursed section of the Voyager? As shadows danced closer, Sarah knew they had to discover the truth or be consumed whole. "Find a way out!" she shouted, but the laughter swelled, drowning her out. Despair loomed thick in the air, their moment of hope was slipping away. In the depths of that dining area, one lingering question taunted her: would they find an escape, or were they destined to join the lost souls waiting ahead? The air felt electric as the laughter faded into a menacing silence. Sarah scanned the room, her heart racing. The light flickered overhead, casting eerie shadows that seemed to twist and elongate, like fingers reaching out for them. Mia clung tighter to her, and Jake's eyes darted around the room, searching for anything that could help them. "What do we do?" Jake whispered, his voice trembling. "Find something, anything," Sarah replied, urgency coursing through her veins. As she stepped forward, she moved cautiously among the scattered tables, their surfaces caked in dust that rose like whispers of the past. Whatever had happened here still hung in the air, a staleness that was both suffocating and suffused with dread. Suddenly, from the corner of her eye, Sarah noticed a glint. A silver key lay half buried under a set of broken plates. She knelt, her fingers trembling as she snatched it up. "I found something," she exclaimed, hope sparking briefly in her chest. "Maybe that'll open the door," Mia suggested. Sarah nodded, but as she turned toward the entrance, the door suddenly trembled as if something heavy was crashing against it, the force rattling the entire frame. "Get back!" Sarah shouted, pulling Jake and Mia behind a toppled table. The hinges groaned, and the door buckled again, opening slightly to reveal a pitch-black corridor beyond. Shivering darkness rolled into the room, tangling with the light as if it wanted to engulf them whole. "Is there another way out?" Jake asked, trembling, his grip on his sister tightening. Sarah's mind raced. The dining area had no windows, just walls painted with more haunting images, faces, tormented expressions melded into one another, frozen in eternal horror. She couldn't bear to look at them anymore, not when it felt like they were watching her. "Look for other doors or passageways," Sarah directed. The urgency in her voice pushed them into action. Jake swept across the far side, pushing against walls looking for seams, while Mia scanned under tables, her small hands brushing against dust and debris, but it was then that they heard the sound of scratching, nails scraping against metal. "What's that?" Mia whimpered, her voice small and terrified. "I don't know," Sarah replied, fear clutching at her throat. All their earlier whispers and laughter were supplanted by that skittering sound, growing louder, angrier. It echoed in the depths of the room, a sign that they were not alone. The door behind them creaked ominously, its gap widening just enough that a sliver of blackness poured through. Panic rose in Sarah's throat. "Quick! Try that door." She pointed to an unmarked door on the far wall, almost hidden in shadow. Jake nodded, pushing against Mia gently. "Come on." They sprinted toward the door, but before they could reach it, the laughter returned distorted and mocking, piercing through the confusion. It came from all sides, swirling around them like a dark wind. "Run!" Sarah shouted, her marbles of hope rolling away as dread took root. With each frantic step, the scratching reverberated like a heartbeat, the ship's own pulse thrumming with malevolence. Their feet pounded against the ground, urgency driving them. As Sarah reached for the doorknob, it felt cold against her palm, sending a shiver up her spine. She twisted it and pushed, but the door didn't budge. "It stuck!" she yelled, panic spilling over. Behind them, the scratching grew closer, the laughter converging until it felt like the very walls were alive with torment. "Help!" Mia cried, her voice breaking, tears spilling over in fear. In that moment of desperation, Sarah felt the walls close in, the shadows closing like a noose. "We're not giving up." She shoved against the door with all her strength, but it resisted, as if the ship itself wanted them trapped inside. Just then, she heard a different sound, something breathing, steadily and heavily. "Please let us out," Jake pleaded. With one final push, Sarah felt the door begin to give way, and a rush of air whipped around them, stinging their eyes and forcing them to gasp for breath. But before they could escape, the floor trembled beneath their feet, splitting apart in a jagged line, a chasm of darkness opening up. Mia screamed. "Not again!" Sarah shouted, desperately trying to hold on to her children, who were slipping from her grasp. Terror gripped her heart as that voice filled the air again. You cannot escape the cycle, and in that moment, as the shadows danced closer, Sarah realized they were not just fighting for survival, they were caught in an endless loop, where every attempt to escape only deepened their despair. "What's down there?" Jake yelled, wide-eyed as the fissure widened, darkness swirling like a living thing. "I don't know, but we have to find out." As the shadows clawed at her heels and the darkness wrapped around them, Sarah steeled herself, knowing they had to confront whatever awaited them. With one determined breath, they plunged into the unknown. What waited at the bottom of that abyss? Would it offer hope or more horror? As they fell through the darkness, time lost its meaning. Sarah grasped at anything, but the void swallowed her entirely. The sensation of weightlessness left her stomach lurching. Then the ground rushed up to meet them. They landed hard, a thud that rippled through their bodies, sending shocks of pain through their limbs. Dazed, Sarah blinked, trying to make sense of the dim light filtering through a haze. What happened? Mia's voice trembled from beside her, small and desolate. We're okay," Sarah managed, pushing herself up to assess their surroundings. Their landing had been cushioned by layers of dust and dirt, a strange yellowish light flickering above them, revealing twisted metal and crumbling walls. The air felt different, thick with an oppressive heaviness. Short, raspy gasps echoed around them, whispering secrets that crawled beneath the skin. Shadows danced at the edges of her vision, just out of reach, chilling her blood. "Where are we?" Jake asked, his eyes wide and glossy, teetering on the edge of fear. I don't know, she replied, her voice faltering as the weight of uncertainty pressed down on her heart. We need to keep moving. As they stumbled through the debris-strewn corridor, Sarah noticed the walls were covered in cryptic symbols, grotesque etchings of eyes and gaping mouths that seemed to leer at them. An unsettling thought crossed her mind: they were not just witnesses to an abandoned world, but participants in a grim tableau of despair. Sarah, Mia's voice pulled her from the turmoil of panic. Look! Mia pointed ahead where a faint glow beckoned like a distant flame. Sarah swallowed hard, heart pounding. Let us see, she urged, her instincts screaming that they had little choice. They picked their way through a maze of twisted metal and shattered remains. The scratching that had once filled the air now returned. It was louder, sharper, like the sound of claws dragging against stone. Each wave of sound spat dread into the very marrow of their bones. They reached the light and emerged in what looked like a cavernous chamber. Flickering bulbs bathed the space in an eerie glow, revealing grotesque statues seemingly carved from flesh, not stone. They were frozen in various states of agony, mouths agape, eyes wide with terror. "Oh God," Jake whispered, backing away. Then they heard it again, louder this time, a guttural growl rumbling from the shadows. It was coming from the opposite side of the room. The fear in Sarah intensified, turning her blood to ice. "We need to hide," she said, urgency casting her words like nets. They ducked behind a massive statue, hearts racing, breaths shallow. To their horror, a figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked in darkness yet unmistakably human. It strode with purpose, head cocked to one side, a wide grin splitting its face, revealing teeth unnaturally long. The memory of that haunting laughter roared back, echoing all around them as if the very walls were in on the joke. "What is it?" Mia whimpered, her voice barely a whisper. "I don't know," Sarah replied, desperation creeping in. She grasped the silver key tightly, feeling its cold bite against her palm. Maybe it was their ticket out. But what would it unlock? Then the figure stopped and turned gradually, its shadow stretching across the chamber, searching. Eyes of haunting malice narrowed, fixating on their hiding spot. "Run!" Sarah screamed, adrenaline surging through her as she grasped her children's hands. They bolted from behind the statue, racing toward another narrow opening at the far end of the room, their footsteps echoing against the stone like thunder. The growl betrayed their flight, morphing into a roar that sent a wave of terror crashing through them as they darted forward, breathless. "Sarah! The key!" Jake's voice rang out, desperation hanging in the air. He had shifted his grip on her arm, urging her to turn back toward the looming figure. Fear gripped her throat. "No! I can't!" As they reached the opening, a hand shot out from the darkness, reaching for them. Sarah felt her heart stop. "Faster! We have to go!" She shouted, but fate would intervene, and in that moment of chaos, she felt the ground give way beneath her feet. They were plunged back into darkness, the laughter echoing behind them like a promise of doom. As they fell again, one thought struck her: there was no escape, only the cycle of endless dread that awaited their return. What else lurked in the shadows, waiting to drag them deeper into the unknown? Impact with the ground sent a jolt through Sarah's body, pulling her back to consciousness. Dazed and vision blurry, she could hear Mia's muffled cries and Jake's heavy breathing, both echoing in her ears. Panic clawed at her throat, but she pushed herself up, fighting through the fog of confusion. The surroundings were unfamiliar, another chamber, but this one felt more oppressive, more alive. The air vibrated with an unsettling hum, like the sound of a swarm just out of sight. "Are we still in that place?" Mia stuttered, wide-eyed. "I think so," Sarah replied, her heart racing again. "We need to find a way out." The trio rose cautiously, scanning the room. Echoes of laughter and cries lingered, twisting around them like tendrils of smoke. Every surface seemed to pulse, as if the chamber itself was alive, watching them. "Look at that!" Jake shouted, pointing to a large circular portal on the far wall, shimmering faintly, almost beckoning them. It contrasted sharply against the cold, dark concrete surrounding them. Maybe it's a way out. A flicker of hope ignited in Sarah's chest, but it quickly doused under the weight of fear. Wait. We shouldn't rush into anything, she warned, feeling the chill of intuition. The air felt electric, charged with something they could not yet comprehend. As they moved cautiously toward the portal, the whispers grew louder, wrapping around their minds, pulling at their sanity. Voices layered upon one another, some pleading, others commanding, forming a terrifying chorus that threatened to compress her skull. A bright flash erupted from the portal, momentarily blinding them. Shadows warped and twisted within, coiling into shapes that seemed to reflect their worst fears. Sarah stumbled back, heart in her throat. It's a trap. She screamed, but the sound seemed swallowed by the mounting crescendo of the chaotic cacophony. Mia! Jake shouted, but before they could react, something shot out from the portal. It was a tendril long and sinewy, reaching for them with dark intent. Run! Sarah screamed again, lunging back. The tendril slashed through the air like a whip, narrowly missing her arm, sending a spray of cold air across her skin that paralyzed her with ice. The frantic pounding of their hearts drowned out everything else as they scrambled away from the portal, throwing quick glances over their shoulders. The whispers morphed into shrieks, echoing with anger and despair. This place fed off their fear, twisting it, making them a part of it. Where do we go? Jake yelled, terror flooding his voice. Anywhere but here. Sarah gasped, scanning the room. Desperation clawed at her throat. They couldn't stay in this suffocating chamber. In the distance, she saw yet another passageway. It was darker but also quieter. Without a second thought, she grabbed both kids and raced towards it, the echoes of madness chasing them. Every shadow seemed to stretch and claw at them as they ran, but they pushed harder, gasping for air. With each step they took, the sounds of the portal faded behind them, replaced by a disconcerting silence that felt foreboding. They burst through the threshold, tumbling into yet another dimly lit corridor clad in what appeared to be decaying flesh-like walls. The further they moved, the more the feeling of dread coiled around them, tightening. What was that thing? Mia whispered between breaths, her eyes darting nervously. I don't know, Sarah replied, trembling. The key rattled against her chest, a reminder of their fate. But we need to keep moving. We have to find a way out before whatever that was catches us. As they pressed on, a grating noise erupted behind them, a scratching sound that echoed throughout the corridor. It grew louder, more distinct, and the darkness shifted again. A figure loomed in the shadows, twisted and enormous, its presence sending chills down Sarah's spine. Suddenly, the corridor split. One path led deeper into the darkness, the other climbed steeply upwards toward faint light. Where should she lead them? Would either path be their salvation or their doom, choosing one with her? Heart pounding in her ears, Sarah had only a second to act. The creature was closing in, and whatever was behind them promised that their fate awaited in the unseen depths. Jake, Mia, come on! She shouted, desperate, and as they made their choice, a question echoed through her mind: had they chosen to escape, or simply run headlong into an even darker nightmare? The chilling silence enveloped them as they chose the ascending path, Jake and Mia clinging to Sarah's sides. The light above flickered, teasing them with hope, but the deep shadows behind whispered that it was about to end. Each step felt heavier, each echo of their scrambling feet magnifying the fear gnawing at their insides. The corridor began to narrow, the walls pulsating a grotesque mimicry of their anxiety. Sarah's heart raced, its rhythm a staccato plea for survival, while the scratching noise behind them morphed into a grotesque symphony. She glanced back, daring to look, only to see an inky mass slither through the darkness, its form barely defined but consuming everything in its path. Faster! She urged, desperation rising in her throat. They rounded a bend, the flickering light above revealing more of the corridor, now torn and ragged, like the very fabric of the world was unraveling. The air turned thick, almost suffocating, as if it absorbed their fears and released a storm of malevolence. Look! Mia pointed ahead, her voice a tremor. It's getting brighter. The source of the light shimmered like a mirage, pulling Sarah toward it with a magnetic force. But as they closed in, the brightness twisted, warping into shapes, faces contorted in agony, reaching out as if to claim them. Was this salvation? Or another trap? The light, it's not safe. Sarah shouted, attempting to halt their momentum. But it was too late, her warning was lost to the clamoring of their collective panic. They reached the opening, a large archway that led into what resembled a grand chamber, flooded with a blinding brilliance. But within that beauty lay a chilling reality, as the light revealed the grotesque remains of those who had come before them. Bodies laid strewn across the floor, eyes wide with terror, mouths frozen in eternal screams, like macabre trophies of whatever dwelt here. Mia gasped, recoiling at the sight. "We shouldn't be here. We need to go back." "No." Sarah snapped, shaking with determination and fear. "We have to keep moving. We might find something, anything that can help us." But just as she said this, the ground beneath them trembled, sending vibrations through the air. The walls pulsated even more intensely, the once comforting light now morphed into a suffocating haze that clawed at their sanity. From the corners of the chamber, shadows slithered forward, grotesque limbs creeping forth to claim the living amongst the dead. "Run!" Jake's voice broke through, and they sprinted deeper into the gruesome scenery, adrenaline skyrocketing as primal survival kicked in. Whispers surged around them, 1,000 voices crashing together, muttering incoherently yet collectively, each word seeping into their minds. "Join us, stay forever, they won't let you go." Sarah felt her skin crawl. No. This cannot be happening. Panic surged within her, each heartbeat screamed against the encroaching darkness. They rushed into another corridor, but this one was different. Instead of descending or climbing, it stretched infinitely, flickering lights disappearing into a repressive void. Doubt gnawed at Sarah. Had they chosen the right path? Or were they merely running toward their doom? "Where are we going?" Mia panted, collapsing against the wall, her breath quickening, terror wrestling with exhaustion. "Somewhere safe," Sarah replied, though her own words faltered as she caught a glimpse of the shadowy mass closing in from behind, a horrible distortion of the creature they had seen before, towering and wretched. Panic spilled over as they raced through what felt like an eternity, the walls narrowing, the voices growing louder, chanting their doom. Just as despair threatened to drown them, a single word echoed above the din: "Key." "What?" she gasped. "It said key." Jake shouted, glancing back. That single word ignited something in Sarah. The key in her pocket. She yanked it out, its weight grounding her for a moment. "We have to use it. We're missing something that might end this." But as she spoke, shadows coiled around them, ready to snuff out the last flicker of hope. Could the key they fought to find save them, or was it another layer of the nightmare promising escape yet delivering them deeper into horror? In that instant, the choice lay bare before them: trust in the key or risk everything to plunge further into the darkness. As the creature loomed closer, an icy whisper echoed through the chamber: "Your choice will decide everything." The darkness loomed, a choking haze around Sarah, Jake, and Mia as they stood frozen. The air buzzed with tension, the ominous creature just steps away. "Key!" Jake yelled, his voice a lifeline in the suffocating silence. The word echoed in Sarah's mind like a siren's call. "Where do we use it?" Mia's eyes shimmered, glancing around in fearful desperation. "Look! Over there." Sarah pointed down the corridor. A glimmer reflected from something at the very end, a heavy door adorned with bizarre symbols, pulsating softly with muted light as if inviting them to come closer. "Let us go." They darted toward the door, shadows clawing at their backs. The whispers crescendoed, drowning out all reason with frantic cries of despair. "Faster!" Sarah urged, heart pounding. The door beckoned, its presence both daunting and filled with enigmatic promise. Would it be their salvation or the final seal of their doom? "Get it open!" Jake shouted as they skidded to a halt, heavily breathing against the oppressive tide threatening to drown them in dread. Sarah fumbled with the key, her fingers trembling as she inserted it into the ancient lock. The sound of twisting metal echoed ominously as the door shuddered, grip loosening under the weight of their terror. "Please work," Mia pleaded, her knees trembling, fear clawing at her resolve. With a hefty shove, the door creaked open, revealing a luminous chamber bathed in a soft, inviting glow, light and warmth pouring over them like a welcoming embrace. "Is this okay?" Jake's voice quivered, scanning the vastness adorned with hanging crystals that sparkled like starlight. Each step propelled them deeper into a wonderland that momentarily shattered the suffocating darkness they fled. "Only one way to find out," Sarah responded, determination snapping her from her fear-laden thoughts. As they crossed the threshold, the oppressive weight of the shadows fell behind them. Cold fingers of darkness reached forward but recoiled against the radiant light. The whispers transformed into desperate howls of fury, angered by their escape. "Close the door," Mia screamed, instinctually pushing against the heavy wood. "They'll follow." With hoarse breaths, Sarah forced the door shut, sealing away the echoes of despair. The hum of life surrounding them invigorated her. "What is this place?" Jake asked in awe. "Maybe it's the ship's heart," Sarah ventured, stepping closer to a pedestal in the center, adorned with the same symbols they had seen earlier. They glowed softly, pulsating in rhythm with their racing hearts. Her intuition was confirmed as she touched the surface. The symbols surged to life, illuminating the room in cascading light. Images flickered around them: passengers, lost souls trapped for years, echoes of laughter and screams tinged with sorrow. Each face told stories of lives cut horrifically short, revealing the ship's dark legacy. A curse feeding off fear, trapping the living to join its torment. "We have to free them," Jake whispered, voice trembling but filled with fierce determination. But as she gazed into those tormented faces, the light darkened momentarily, echoing their pain. "You cannot escape." "Together," Sarah shouted, gripping her children's hands. "We can break the bond." With resolve fueling them, they stood against the tide of fear washing over them, channeling courage into the symbols. They focused on the stories intertwining with theirs, memories of love, hope, and unity binding them together. "Away with suffering. Release them," Sarah cried, her voice rising in sync with her resolve. Light erupted from the symbols, swirling around them, absorbing the darkness and spilling outwards into the very essence of the ship. Cries filled the air, not of fear, but of liberation. Ghostly figures poured through the brightness, their anguished faces shifting toward peace. The tension that enveloped them began to lift. "Keep pushing," Jake shouted, the power surging with their wills intertwined. With a final surge of energy, the room shook violently, the structure of the ship shuddering in protest. The shadows receded, wailing as they were torn from the realm of sorrow, and just like that, the light shattered the prison of darkness, illuminating everything around them. The rumble of the ship echoed in distant waves, falling quiet as if the vessel itself sighed in relief. A blinding flash engulfed them as they were pulled backward, still entwined. When the light faded, Sarah blinked against it, her heart racing. They stood on the deck of the Voyager, the sun setting on the horizon, casting gold and crimson hues across the sky. Other passengers looked on, appearing stunned yet peaceful, freed from their ghostly bindings. "Did we do it?" Mia asked, her eyes wide with disbelief. Sarah breathed deep, relief flooding her chest. "I think we did." Engulfed in the moment, they held on to each other, hope shimmering in their hearts. They were free. They had defied fate itself, reclaimed their lives and the lives of those lost. As the Voyager docked, the familiar shores of Fisher's Point came into view, revitalizing the promise of fresh starts. "Let us go home," Jake said, smiling for the first time in what felt like an eternity, but Sarah knew this victory was theirs alone. They had conquered monsters, both outside and within. "Together," she replied, squeezing their hands as they stepped onto solid ground. As the sun dipped below the horizon, another chapter began, filled with promises of light, laughter, and newfound strength. This was the moment they would carry into the world. What lay behind was merely a lesson on resilience. A truth that darkness can haunt, but courage can lead to light. They walked forward, a family reborn by every shadow they faced as one. And now, before you go, I need to talk to you, yes, you watching. If this story touched your heart, you need to subscribe immediately to my channel so you don't miss out on the next exclusive tales. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm monsters, so we can continue this journey together. And I want to hear you flood the comments section with your thoughts about the ending and any theories you have. Your voices matter. Finally, don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion with us. Let us spread these stories like wildfire. Show your unstoppable support, and together we'll bring even more tales to life.